Chapter 4. Oliver is apprenticed to an undertaker. Mr Bumble was returning one day to the workhouse when he met at the gate Mr Sowerberry, the undertaker, a tall, bony man dressed in a worn-out black suit. As Mr Sowerberry advanced to Mr Bumble, he shook him by the hand and said, "I have taken the measurements of the 2 women that died last night, Mr Bumble."
"You'll make your fortune, Mr Sowerberry," said Mr Bumble.
"Think so?" said the undertaker. "The prices allowed by the board are very small, Mr Bumble."
"So are the coffins," replied the latter.
Mr Sowerberry laughed for a long time at this joke. "Well, well, Mr Bumble," he said finally, "I don't deny that, since the new system of feeding has been introduced, the coffins are somewhat narrower than they used to be. But we must have some profit, Mr Bumble. Wood is expensive, sir."
"Well, well," said Mr Bumble, "every trade has its disadvantages. By the way, you don't know anybody who wants a boy, do you?"
"Ah!" exclaimed the undertaker, "that's the very thing I wanted to speak to you about. You know, Mr Bumble, I think I'll take the boy myself." Mr Bumble seized the undertaker by the arm and led him into the building, where it was quickly arranged that Oliver should go to him that evening. Oliver heard this news in perfect silence, and, carrying a brown paper parcel in his hand, which was all the luggage he had, he was led away by Mr Bumble to a new scene of suffering. For some time they walked in silence. As they drew near to Mr Sowerberry's shop, Mr Bumble looked down to make sure that the boy was clean and neat enough to be seen by his new master.
"Oliver," said Mr Bumble, "pull that cap up off your eyes and hold up your head."
Oliver did as he was told at once, but when he looked up at Mr Bumble, there were tears in his eyes. Mr Bumble stared at him coldly. The child made a brave attempt to stop crying, but the tears rolled down his cheeks, and he covered his face with both hands.
"Well," exclaimed Mr Bumble, stopping short and looking at him with hatred, "of all the ungrateful and unpleasant boys I have ever seen, Oliver, you are the—"
"No, no, sir," cried Oliver, holding tightly to the hand which held the stick. "No, no, sir. I will be good indeed. Indeed I will, sir. I am a very little boy, sir, and it is so—
"So what?" inquired Mr Bumble in surprise.
"So lonely, sir, so very lonely," cried the child. The undertaker had just closed his shop and was writing the details of the day's business by lamplight when Mr Bumble entered.
"Here, Mr Sowerberry, I've brought the boy."
"Oh, that's the boy, is it?" said the undertaker, raising the lamp above his head to get a better view of Oliver. "Mrs Sowerberry, will you have the goodness to come here a moment, my dear?" Mrs Sowerberry, a short, thin, bad-tempered woman, came in from a little room behind the shop. "My dear," said Mr Sowerberry respectfully, "this is the boy from the workhouse that I told you about."
"Dear me," she said. "He's very small." "Yes, he is rather small," replied Mr Bumble, "but he'll grow, Mrs Sowerberry. He'll grow."
"Oh, I dare say he will," replied the lady angrily, "on our food and drink. I see no use for workhouse children, not I, for they always cost more to keep than they are worth. However, men always think they know best. There, get downstairs, little bag of bones." The undertaker's wife opened a side door and pushed Oliver down some stairs into a dark room which was used as a kitchen. In it sat an untidy girl in worn-out shoes and a torn blue dress. "Here, Charlotte," said Mrs Sowerberry, who had followed Oliver down. Give this boy some of the cold bits of meat that were put aside for the dog. The dog hasn't come home since the morning, so he can go without them."
Oliver's eyes shone at the mention of meat. A plateful of broken pieces was set before him, and he ate rapidly while Mrs. Sowerberry watched him with silent horror. When he had finished, she ordered him to follow her and, taking a dirty lamp in one hand, she led the way upstairs again.
"Your bed is under the counter. You don't mind sleeping among the coffins, I suppose? But it doesn't matter whether you do or don't, for you can't sleep anywhere else."
Oliver obediently followed her.